Morning. Thank you very much. I want to start by thanking the IRP for inviting Zimbabwe to this important platform, which I view as a precursor to the global platform. We are already in the mood. May is too far for us, and I'm sure the purpose of this platform will assist us in sharing our experiences in showcasing success stories as a result of our collaborative framework with development partners, the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the private sector, and the leaders at community level, which constitute our architecture of managing disasters in this country. Our focus definitely, as you mentioned, on redesigning systems for resilience through recovery, and this will be strictly the Zimbabwean case study. And I'm happy that the Sendai framework in its implementation in Zimbabwe has taught us not to do things in a haphazard manner. And listening to the previous presentation, I think that's the model we will also follow. So thank you very much. Next slide, please. It is no doubt that Zimbabwe remains vulnerable to the effects of climate change, and that climate change has resulted in Zimbabwe being vulnerable to quite a number of hydrometeorological hazards in the form of droughts, in the form of floods, and in the form of cyclones. And the biggest cyclone to visit Zimbabwe, as we are all aware, was the cyclone Sendai of 2019, which left unprecedented levels of destruction in this country. And to exacerbate our situation is the current pandemic, which is COVID-19. And going back to cyclone Sendai, you would find that it has tested everything we thought was in order, including our systems. After we lost quite a number of people to the tune of 347, 200 injured, quite a number of people still missing, some still buried in our sister country of Mozambique, ready for exhumation and repatriation back to Zimbabwe after we have undertaken some DNA tests. So Cyclone Sendai remains a turning point in the disaster risk management history of Zimbabwe, as we have to change almost everything in terms of the architecture, and it had to invite quite a lot of political will and commitment. And as I speak today, you will find that of the 21 ministries we have, 17 are members to the Standing Cabinet Committee on Environment, Disaster Prevention and Management, which is a sign of political commitment and political will by the government of Zimbabwe. Whoever chairs that committee, who happens to be my minister, only need to convince 4 ministers to have an effective cabinet decision made. However, first and foremost, we looked at our functionality of the systems as a way of enhancing disaster preparedness, and we realized that we could not do it alone. So the current model, where we are working with the World Bank and the African Development Bank through UNOPS, and UNOPS with its other UN agencies, were to capitalize the Department of Civil Protection and other civil protection organizations in terms of providing early warning systems. That's why you find in our presentation, we have the Meteorological Services Department. We had to harness technology to ensure that that preparedness is also enhanced. Next slide, please. Next slide, which says advances in enhancing disaster preparedness. But one key factor, as we said, our recovery is not an end in itself. It must enhance resilience for the affected community. So resilience building is currently what we are grappling with. And if you check, notwithstanding that we have a backlog in terms of recovering from even the past devastating Cyclone Idai related disasters since 2000. To date, the government of Zimbabwe has injected quite a substantial amount of money towards the recovery of infrastructure, especially roads and bridges in the twin districts of Chimanimani and Chipinge. And this has added a lot of value and meaning to our recovery and resilience programs in those districts affected by. And more importantly, the work being done by the World Bank and the African Development Bank is highly cherished. And other partners such as China Aid are also supporting us in rehabilitating the affected wards, and also some of the implementing partners who managed to access eco funds had a crisis modifier in them, and they have assisted us a lot in the recovery of our people in Chimanimani. And the concept of building back better, which our previous presenter alluded to, remain an important cog in our reconstruction activities. And we ended up having climate resilient infrastructure through redesigning all the infrastructure, and UNOPS being the lead UN agents in that aspect is doing quite a lot. So we now have what we can refer to as climate resilient infrastructure. We have done some hazard risk mapping with the assistance of UNESCO. You really need to know which areas are hotspots for what kind of a hazard. So I am happy that UNESCO, working with our own agencies in government, has managed to do quite a lot on risk mapping. Communication remains key, and the ministry responsible for information has been driving this process, not only on paper. We now have quite a number of community radios as a way of enhancing that communication. But to start with, we had to look at Chimanimani, Chipinge, and Nyanga because of their similar terrain. Moving on to integration and inclusivity. I am sure for those who are viewing my presentation, you can see some smiling faces showing that people have now fully recovered from the effects of Cyclone Idai. They are now able to produce for their own livelihood. And all our disaster management committees at national, when I say national, from the cabinet committee, the national civil protection structure, the provincial structures, the district structures, and more importantly, we have a critical mass which we always harness in Zimbabwe, one of traditional leaders. The 36,000 of them, we have now primed them and ready to make them effective first responders to end disasters. Yes, in this whole process of building back better, there are some barriers, but we have also tried to come up with measures to ensure that, yes, whilst there is need to build back fast, there is also need to do it properly. I know after a disaster, as we respond, this idea of bringing or restoration of a sense of normalcy, it always put pressure on disaster practitioners, but it has to be managed. And in terms of disintegration, we have a clear architecture now for managing disasters in Zimbabwe. For reference sake, if you read the rapid impact needs assessment, which was done by the World Bank on page 79, you will see that architecture there. And that's the blueprint we follow when we are all dealing with disasters in Zimbabwe, so that we have a coherent team. And devolution has now played a role in terms of enhancing our tentacles as we manage some of these disasters. So issues of bureaucracy can now be tackled at district, at local authority level, without necessarily referring anything to the center. The center will be only there for quality control and monitoring progress in terms of implementing all those programs. Support required to do your build back better. That's the financing. Yes, whilst our appeal to the international community only yielded 133 million, that actually gave the government more ideas of how to move ahead, of how to forge ahead in recovering and building resilience for our people. So mostly you will find that whilst the partners were augmenting government efforts, government had to inject in quite a lot of money. I want to thank you once again for inviting Zimbabwe to this important platform. Thank you very much.